Now, to the Enlightenment. Let's get through this really quick. What were the major ideas of the Age of Reason, and what are the effects of the Enlightenment? Those are the things we want to look at. But going through this list, reason. It's just this, the idea that human beings can make sense or understand the world. That's reason. Okay, using our human capacity to reason. Progress is the idea that things are going to improve. That humans, not just that things will improve, but that humans have the capacity to improve things. Right? And that's one of the great things of the Enlightenment, is that humans can improve things. We can bring about progress. If we change certain things, if we pass certain laws, we will create progress. Deism, as we already discussed, is this idea that, the world operates along mechanical principles, and that God was the maker and designer of those principles, but is not actually involved in this world. So we sort of... Exactly. So this world is like a clock. It's ticking along, and so God was the clock maker. God created it, and we can see that God created it because it's perfect, right? All these things, there's space, there's laws, it sort of is this perfect creation, but that God is not interfering in it. And so that's why there's not miracles, right? David Hume, another empiricist, rejects miracles. That's why Newton's laws of motion do apply everywhere, because God doesn't move this paper from there to there. Something else moved, right? And so, God's not going to interfere in the motion of this planet ever, right? And so, yeah.
What happens when the watch needs winding?
When the watch needs winding.
When you wind up a watch?
The analogy does not go that far.
Does the world just end at some point? Or?
Well,
that's when God goes in and starts fixing things.
Yeah, maybe.
That's when the miracles come in.
Yeah. So
or at that point, the planet Krypton stops moving and goes right into this. You're right. It's like that's what's happening at the beginning of Superman Wanted. Like it's slowly coming closer into the sun, and then like explodes when it gets so close. But you wonder why Marlon Brando doesn't melt first. Right? Why it's just sort of like, why it just sort of explodes. You'd think everything on it would die before it sort of physically explodes.
We also have to wonder why the yellow sun gives Superman his powers. What about the color yellow?
You're right. I don't really know. I don't know. So, yeah. So moving on. So reason, progress, and deism, those are some of the key ideas of the Enlightenment. The salon is the place where Enlightenment ideas are being exchanged, often hosted by women, most famously Madame de Giaffrin. That's always my example that I use, that I've committed to memory for the sake of my annual review sessions on the Enlightenment. So, Madame de Giaffrin, let me spell that out. Obviously, you can go back, and if you're really interested in doing an essay on women throughout history and want to make sure you're an expert, maybe you could find a couple other examples of women hosting salons. So what these women would do is often it would be weekly. They'd invite people over. They would begin conversation. They would move it around. And who was coming to these things? Government officials and army members, scientists, and other thinkers and writers and critics would be coming to these things as well. And so they'd be just sitting around and at these salons, eating and having conversations about the issues of the day. And it's not actually just in salons. All sorts of historical scholarship is going on how ideas are actually transmitted. This is actually an exciting realm of history right now. We know ideas that exist, but how do they move and spread? And so a lot of other people, some other historians have noted that coffee houses are very key in spreading ideas. And so coffee houses come about because now there's coffee to be drunk for people to drink. To be drunk, is that to be drinking? Drank? To be drank?
Dranked.
To be drank.
Sounds like something I would say.
I think we should settle on drankened.
So Yeah, so there's, so, you know, and so people now have coffee. It's being imported from overseas. And so these are places where things are being, where these ideas are being exchanged. And all sorts of, you know, writings and publications, often knockoffs of the actual philosophes. You know, they'll be transmitting ideas as well. And so there's all of these pamphlets and things that are being written. And of course, as a result of the increasing size of the reading population, why did that happen? We can look back to two trends: the Protestant Reformation and the focus on religion, or the focus on education and reading as a result of Protestant and Catholic Reformations and wanting to educate people and wanting to read the Bible. And the second trend that we can focus for the increase of education is the increasing prosperity in Europe as a result of the commercial revolution. More money being made, as more trades going on, and this means the middle class is growing, and this means they're educating their children in schools. And so the literary population, the people that can read, is growing. And so therefore, these publications are going to be widespread and spreading ideas. Okay, so philosophes are these thinkers of the Enlightenment. So let's go through some of them. A philosophe is basically a critic. They are writers. They are, they have commentary. They're not scientists themselves, and they're more critics of the day. And so they have social commentary to be said. So the word philosopher means more. The word philosopher suggests a sort of level of depth and original insight that the philosophes don't quite have, right? So Rousseau, Rousseau is a philosopher. Some of the great philosophes are clearly philosophers. But many are just social critics, sort of commenting on issues of their day. Or social reformers, commenting on the need for reforms in different areas. So Montesquieu is one of those. His spirit of the laws, basically, he argues that there should be a separation of powers between different branches. And in the spirit of laws, he says, after observing Britain and liking the British model, he says there should be three separate branches: the executive, the legislature, and the judicial. The executive will execute or oversee the laws. The legislature will create the laws. The judicial will have its job, sort of implementing the law, trying people when they don't follow the laws, right? So, sort of interpreting whether the laws are followed or not. Montesquieu is not a fan of Louis XIV's absolutism and the absolutism Louis XV, and so he obviously likes that. But not everyone is opposed to absolutism. For example, Voltaire very much favors an absolutist government as long as that government allows freedom of thought and freedom to write and freedom to think. In fact, most philosophes think that an enlightened monarch, an enlightened leader, will be able to spread enlightened ideas. And in fact, will be able to create a better society. And so there's this idea that, a leader is a tool. An enlightened leader will spread Enlightenment ideas when it comes to reforming, say, criminal laws, or reforming, say, religious laws, or reforming civil laws when it comes to the rights of individuals. So